calm the fuck down. I gotta get a pump.
Yeah, take a moment. That's it. That's good. Listen, Danny, I know what it's like to think you killed somebody. And it hurts. I mean, you got Jesus and the devil swirling. That's it, get it. Jesus, devil swirling all up in your head. I was lucky because my guy lived.
3, 2, 1. Action. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wrestling in Film podcast. This is episode 14 of the Wrestling in Film podcast, and today we shift gears again, move away from the interviews, and we're going to endure some pain and a little bit of gain when we look at and celebrate, I guess, the 10-year anniversary of Pain and Gain. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Mark Wahlberg, Anthony Mackie, and of course the film was directed by Michael Bay. It's one that slips under the radar a little bit for, I guess, some obvious reasons, but at the same time, it was a very unique and interesting project in the year, what I like to call the year of The Rock. So 10 years ago, 2013, Rock came off of WrestleMania, his final match currently his final wrestling match ever against John Cena. So he was high as can be in the wrestling world. Then he had four releases that year, four Hollywood releases that year. Snitch, which was again based off a real story, very different from DJ's normal characters. G.I. Joe Retaliation very much fits the mold of an action bonanza The Rock's known for. Pain and Gain, and then obviously that was followed by Fast and Furious 6. But of course, we're focusing on Pain and Gain, which celebrated its 10-year anniversary only a few days ago, 26th of April. It hit cinemas, and it was based on what made Pain and Gain so interesting, and it was such a intriguing project. It was based on the Sun Gym Gang of, I believe it's Sun Gym Gang from Miami, and it was a group of ex-cons and bodybuilders who were convicted in the mid-90s for extortion, murder, kidnapping, you name it. And in the film, they base obviously the story on those events in the mid-90s Miami. And so Daniel Lugo, who's Mark Wahlberg, assembles a team of cons bodybuilders, which includes himself, Paul Doyle, which is Dwayne Johnson, and Adrian, which is Anthony Mackie, and they go on a absurd spree of antics, which includes kidnapping Victor Kershaw, which was Tony, I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, Tony Shalhoub, a wonderful actor. His characters, the businessman in the film, and they kidnap him, and they basically take all of his belongings and all of his money, and live a lavish lifestyle. The film itself, I had never actually seen for 10 years. So it finally dawned on me when the 10-year anniversary hit. I was like, actually, I need to finally sit down and watch this. From a wrestling and film standpoint, it's, it's such a fascinating period and fascinating thing in Rock's career, and such a role and movie that was so different for him, even at that time. So I wanted to see what it was. I've seen bits, I've heard a lot. So I wanted to look into it. And for those wrestling and film aficionados, lovers like myself, there is an also small action scene that rematches The Rock and the Olympic hero Kurt Angle as well, which is very cool and fun as well. But the film itself, it starts off very promising. It's really funny. There's a nice blend of humor and kind of genuine intrigue in the story initially. I think, Wahlberg's character really guides it well with the narration, his desire to be a doer and live the American dream in his own way, obviously in the land of crime. Then obviously we get The Rock's conflicted character of a reborn Christian and doing good and don't want to harm people, but he's sucked back into this world by Wahlberg's character. Anthony Mackie, obviously who plays Adrian, who's this who's who continues to build his physique, and he's kind of almost like in a state of flux with his life as well as the other characters. So there's a lot of intrigue at the beginning. It really does. First half an hour, I think it's really solid. But unfortunately, as often we do have with Michael Bay films, Bayhem takes over, and the absurdity of the story, which some elements are absolutely true, but as critics and people have pointed out over the years, many were fabricated and enhanced to create the necessary chaos of a Michael Bay movie. So, there's, I'm summing again, the toe part, I don't know if it's a true or not, but, the Rock's toe gets blown off, there's overuse of drugs, there's people, funky costumes, all sorts of absolutely bombastic things occur. Some funny, some work, but the film seems to get entrenched in just delivering that and giving those moments, as opposed to delving deeper into the story and the kind of conflict and the problems these characters endure to then get to the chaos and almost the downhill slope of their criminal activities. That's the unfortunate part of the film, and I guess that's probably why it's somewhat not remembered or celebrated as much as it maybe could have been. However, the film itself, like I said, there is positives. The start is great. There's still a lot of funny moments, even when it gets a little rocky, shall we say. The cast is great performances. Mark Wahlberg's fantastic. Tony Shalhoub is really great as the antagonist. Ed Harris, who's a detective, is fantastic as always. But one of the standout performance, and I think this was also said by the critics at the time, was Johnson's Paul Doyle, who, funnily enough, is the one character who's actually is somewhat fictional, because it's an amalgamation of characters. I believe it's an amalgamation of I had the names of the two. There was a few different cons involved, and those combinations created the Paul Doyle character. But Rock's character is fantastic. His performance is fantastic. He's really, really engaged. He's really, really engaging from the jump. He's funny. He's layered, which is something you can't often say about a lot of Rock's characters. There is a presentation of cool, as there is with all the Rock's characters, but there's these shifts throughout the film. There's the first act of the Rock's character, second act, third act. It's a really fascinating arc, and there's drastic changes which force the Rock to show drastically different sides of his own ability as a performer, as an actor, which is something you don't see as much or very little of nowadays, which begs the question for many fans, I think, watching this back, is why doesn't The Rock take risks like this anymore? Why doesn't he take risks like this anymore? I mean, if any of you lucky sods out there did read my piece earlier this year, which I explored essentially Rock's failure as Black Adam, I really delved deep into this, that the fact that Rock is now so entrenched and so kind of protected by those around him, himself in a way as well, in this bubble of the superstar that he's created, this image of the cool, charismatic, funny action hero, that he almost can't go away from it, even as much as he tries. he's by those around him as well. He's kind of not allowed to. At least that's what it appears to be like, and it's a shame, and it's a crutch because when I mentioned earlier, The Rock was different in Pain and Gain, and 2013 I said to me was the year of Dwayne The Rock Johnson, because not only did he in those years, I think, especially across his 4 films, find what worked. He found the formula of success, the types of films that he thrives in. Because out of the 4 films he did, Snitch, G.I. Joe Retaliation, Pain and Gain, and Fast and Furious 6. Fast and Furious 6, G.I. Joe Retaliation were the big successes, and they were the films in the similar mode of big tough guy, action, humor, charismatic, action bonanza. Snitch was very grounded, very real, and he's playing, and it's based on real life. Pain and Gain, while not grounded and not real, real in some capacity, but not necessarily not grounded, and certainly heightened and absurd. It was very different, not the traditional Rock character, and it had its own intrigue in its own way. And of course, he had a very large portion of the beginning of the year where he was firmly entrenched in the wrestling world again, where he was wrestling WWE champion, headlining act in that. So he had a range in that year. So as well as finding what worked for him, finding the success formula that year, he had range. So when those G.I. Joes and Fast and Furious came, they were really highly entertaining. They were fun to see Rock in that space that he can do blindfolded. However, we saw different stuff in between. So the range, I think, is what enhanced the success of the other movies as well, and it kept them fresh. So him being different helped his success, in my opinion. Whereas now it's the same thing again and again and again and again and again and again, and that is taken, and then that enjoyment is taken away because we know what we're getting, and you kind of crave something new. And we almost got that with Black. We could have got that with Black Adam, we didn't. Here with Pain and Gain, like, he does it. Like, he gives us something completely different, because there is still Rock as big, jacked up, cool. Yeah, he's soft. Rock is the weak link. The Paul Doyle character is the weak link of the team. He is the softy initially, and then as the film goes on and his demons catch up to him, the drugs, the crazy pie lifestyle, he's the weak link in his craziness and him snorting countless amounts of cocaine and just, indulging in that wild lifestyle with the female character whose name I cannot remember, so my apologies for that. But so now he's the weak link in that fashion, but consistently throughout the film, he's almost the burden and like the weak point of the film. And he's also the one character, I think, throughout you feel, in some capacity, you feel sympathy for, certainly at the beginning, because he's trying to change, he's trying to do good. I can't hurt people, and you're like, oh, and you feel that sympathy for him. But at the same time, does the absurd crap, and he's funny, very funny. When he calls Paul Doyle calls Victor Kershaw's character, like, he's called by Victor Kershaw's character, he's called Eldad, I think it is, and then he refers to him as Pepe, things like that. They have these nicknames for one another. They create this friendship, despite what Paul Doyle, Daniel Lugo, and Adrian are doing to Victor Kershaw. So much we see of that we can see there of The Rock, and then ultimately, the character comes back around, and he's like the good guy almost of the three when they get taken down. So it's really refreshing. It was so refreshing to watch that of The Rock, and he was in so many ways the highlight of that film. And seeing him do that, just I yearn for, for that again, because I see the ability that Rock has to do much more. And, watching Pain and Gain, you're like, even though the film itself, like, yeah, it was what it was, but with Rock's social media presence, how much he promotes a film, I recall when it was in the build up to Pain and Gain, I was really fascinated by that because I knew it was different from the jump, and I was like, damn, like, what's Rock doing in this? And yeah, even though the film doesn't 100% land, there is so much to take from it, especially with The Rock. So I hope DJ can go batshit crazy again and do something like this. I mean, final thoughts on Pain and Gain. Like I said, in the 10 years it's been released, is the first time I finally sat down and watched it. And by no means was I blown away by the film. But like I said, it there was a lot of thought behind, at least there was a lot of thought for me in regards to The Rock. And especially coming off that piece that I had written about him in Black Adam and his failure, it was a reminder of like, oh wow, like, yeah, why doesn't he do this anymore? And I think as I mentioned in the piece, I believe he's such a star now. He could take risks, and the potential for failure is there because he's cemented his status as a star. And doing another film which pushes barriers and pushes his image and his ability to a limit, and pushes him beyond his comfort zone, and something that we absolutely have not seen from him in such a long time, would be incredibly refreshing. And I think it would reignite his career in some form or fashion. Whether or not the film that he chooses to do in terms of a Pain and Gain style of film, which is completely different for him, succeeds or not, it can at least potentially, what I said happened in 2013, where we had range, we had something different every other month. This could in turn, doing another film like this, a character and a portrayal that's out of his star persona, could reignite and allow the audience to yearn for his traditional on-screen presence and star persona that we see. They could yearn for it again if we detour and have something different. So, I mean, that's the big takeaway for me from Pain and Gain. I think it's a film worth watching, for certainly if you're a Rock fan, if you're intrigued by his career arc, and I think it's a fascinating film for kind of these reasons, especially in hindsight, looking back and be like, wow, he did that, because he's not really done anything like that for 10 years. So for that reason, I think it's fascinating. It's wonderful to see his performance because he's so good, so different, so funny, so he's so engaging. He always hooks you, draws you in his scenes, perhaps more than any other. And that's a testament as well, because there's a lot of fantastic performers and actors in the film. So yeah, I mean, the film itself, like I said, worth watching for different reasons, but yeah, it leaves me with that. It leaves me wanting another shift for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So hopefully, that happens soon. But until then, this is a wrestling film podcast. And by the way, DJ, I still love you. I still love you. I really. I got you. But despite that, this was the Wrestling Film Podcast. This was my reflection and my reaction to Pain and Gain 10 years later. Watch Pain and Gain, but more importantly, perhaps, like, subscribe to this podcast, and remember, no pain, no gain. Peace out.